when I was in high school, I really started to dive into progressive rock. Like I grew up listening to jazz, like things like Chicago too and Steely Dan. Like when I was a baby, my dad would always put on either a Steely Dan record, a Chicago record, or something like the Brecker Brothers. So like jazz is something that's really ingrained into who I am as a person. And in high school, my uncles burned me a few Genesis and Yes albums. I was like, oh, I love this. This is great. And then I got into that stuff and then started to go towards the Frank Zappa route. I first heard like You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 2 and the Grand Wazoo and fell in love from there. So I wanted to seek out stuff that sounded like that because it was really speaking to me at that point. So I became a member of the Progressive Ears website, Sean Tonar's amazing progressive rock website. It's been an invaluable resource for me for my young life for discovering music. And I discovered Area on that website. There's like a whole like playlist, sometimes list like bands by subgenre. And I started listening to like Italian progressive rock, which normally is like very symphonic along the same veins as like Yes or Genesis with like a little more romanticism. But Area are a complete outlier for that. They are based in Italy, but they do avant-garde, they do jazz, you name it. They're really different.
This week's request comes from Mike Lieto. Mike co-hosted the prog rock Deep Cuts radio show with Ian Beabout, a requester from the first episode of the season. Man, Mirage by the Muffins. Plus, Mike has maybe the coolest job of anyone I've ever talked to. He's a zookeeper who works with the reptiles at the Bronx Zoo. How cool is that? Mike requested Crac by Area. The one and only thing I know about Area is that they're a proggy/fusion-y band from Italy. But it strikes me that this perhaps doesn't give me a lot of information. I mean, I've heard progressive-sounding music from lots and lots of places. Putting aside British and American bands, which are too numerous to count, I've heard Irish prog,
to a land where time had ne'er its harm.
French prog, Canadian,
There is trouble with the tree.
Japanese, Dutch, German, Australian, Czech. But don't think I've heard any Italian prog. And come to think of it, I'd be hard-pressed to name all that many Italian musicians in general. Plenty of Italian-American musicians, but not many from Italy itself. Well, outside of Vivaldi, Monteverdi, Rossini, Verdi, Paganini, Mario Lanza, Andrea Bocelli, Luciano Pavarotti. Okay, that's fair. But I mean, outside of the classical and the opera sphere, there aren't that many for me. There's the film scores of Ennio Morricone. There's Giorgio Moroder's work in the founding of disco. Oh yeah, there's also a Prisen Colin Insin Chiusol by Adriano Celentano. That song that he wrote where everything is gibberish, but it's meant to sound like English. And we can't forget about Piero Umiliani's soundtrack to the 1968 Mondo film called Sweden, Heaven and Hell. Kind of exploitation documentary meant to shock people by showing the libertine sexual practices of those overly permissive Swedes. Especially one song in particular on that soundtrack that went on to international success due to its inclusion in a widely popular British-American TV collaboration from the late 70s. Aside from that, I mean, I know that Italy has an internationally known dance music and house scene, but I know absolutely nothing about that. So yeah, that's it. Italy is largely unexplored musical territory for me. So how about we get plugged into some Italian prog, huh? Time to get up on the crack. That's how you want to say that, huh? It'll work. Anyway, let's go listen to the album. Take it away, Mike.
So Area is a 5-piece band at this point in time. They are somewhat connected to another band in the Italian progressive rock thing, the PFM, also known as Primatia Forneria Marconi, which means Marconi's famous bakery. And they're connected through the original bass player. The original bass player from Area, after the second album, moved into PFM, and then from their third point on. Things to listen for in this album for certain are really jazz influenced, like improvisation and song structures. Really, like there's some loose swing going on in a lot of pieces. They also keep an eye on for like things to go turn on a dime. And it's not just like your traditional jazz, like chord change solo. It's think of like the Mothers, like 1969, or like some of the like really out there Canterbury groups like Egg. Yeah, like lots of great keyboard playing. There's acoustic bass on half the album too. The big thing about Area is their singer, Demetrio Stratos. He was born in Greece and he spoke Greece, Italian, and Latin. So some of their lyrics are in all three languages, sometimes within the same song. Demetrio, I think, also is one of the most like extraordinary vocalists that has ever lived. He had a crazy vocal range, and he was someone who spent his life researching the limits of the human voice. So like keep an eye out for that. I mean, when you first put this album on, the first thing you're going to hear is him and piano, and it's like a balls to the wall immediately. It's great.
Well, isn't that something? One of the first things I noticed, it's hard not to notice, is that Aria's singer Demetrio Stratos does the same trick, that same yodeling laryngeal trick that Leon Thomas uses on the Karma album by Pharoah Sanders, and that Dean Bowman uses in Screaming Headless Torsos. And I really dig the sound of Aris Tavolazzi's upright bass on this album, somewhere between Miroslav Vidas and Patrick O'Hearn. Not a sound you hear nearly often enough. I love it. First song, The White Elephant.
L'elefante bianco.
There's an opening piano and vocal bit that feels like it wants to be in two different time signatures depending on who you listen to. Then the main instrumental melody, which is based on the altered Dorian or Ukrainian Dorian scale, a rarely used mode of the harmonic minor scale. It's like a Dorian with a raised 4. The Odessa Apple, open parentheses, 1920, close parentheses.
La mela di Odessa, apri parentesi 1920, chiudi parentesi.
In the opening instrumental section, the overdriven tone of Patrizio Fariselli's Rhodes reminds me of many things that I've heard over the years from Kofi Burbridge. Then there's the main groove in the vocal section, quite nearly funky. And over it, Demetrio Stratos is kind of freestyling some spoken lyrics, peppered with some occasional yodely bits. Megalopolis.
Megalopoli.
Very fusiony tune here. Strong vibes of early Weather Report. Upright bass through a wah pedal too. That's pretty cool. The first bass improvisation reminds me some of The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution. But the solo that comes after it is perplexing. Sounds great, but I can't tell for sure what instrument it is. My best guess would be a violin, but there's no violins listed in the credits. Well, whatever it is, it's pretty cool. The cues in the song have a strong Weather Report vibe too, like from Havona. I think Megalopoli is my favorite on the album so far. Exposed Nerves.
Nervi scoperti.
Slower tempo, more subdued than anything on side one. And again, the bass is fabulous. For real, why aren't there more upright basses in fusion bands? Sounds amazing. The main repeating melody is one of those weird deals that you can sing to yourself, but still feels like it has nothing to do with the song's tone center. Unhinged solos from piano, and especially from Paolo Tofani's guitar. And then they do whatever this is, before ending the song with a repeat of the intro melody. Joy and Revolution.
Gioia e rivoluzione.
This tune is based on just some very simple chords. E flat, B flat, A flat, B flat twice, and then F, B flat, A flat, B flat twice. But even though there's not that much that happens in the song musically, especially compared with the rest of the album, the whole thing is so upbeat and happy sounding that it's hard to fault it for just being too simple. Great one for open mics and jams, if you can speak Italian anyway. Implosion.
Implosion è già in inglese. La parola italiana sarebbe implosione.
Starts with a slower and sustained melody over some very busy drums by Giulio Capiozzo. Gives it the feel of like mid-70s Holdsworth maybe. But then the melody that closes the song on the roads is fabulous, syncopated and inventive. I love stuff like this. And last is Area 5.
Questo è difficile perché la traduzione italiana di Area 5 è Zona 5. Ma visto che la band si chiama Area, allora penso che dovremmo mantenerla come Area 5.
Area 5 is just some directed noise. I'm not sure why the songwriting is credited to Juan Hidalgo and Walter Marchetti, two people who don't even appear on the album. Maybe they're the ones doing the directing. Don't know. Man, I gotta tell you, I'm enjoying the hell out of Crac. Addicted to crack already? Yeah, that can happen. In some ways, this album reminds me of some of the things I spent time with last season, like Hatfield in the North and Soft Machine. In other ways, though, it feels more like mid-70s fusion from like the Holdsworth version of Tony Williams' Lifetime or the Miroslav Vidas version of Weather Report. And the best part is I'm not done yet. So while Mike finishes a few things off, I get to stuff a week's worth of crack into my brain. You're not going to stop with the crack jokes, are you? No, I am not. Okay, I'll be right back.
It's like it's not the earliest Italian progressive rock album I've heard, but it is one of my favorites. And because it takes chances. Like this isn't just your typical symphonic progressive rock, which is something I like, but I really gravitate towards something that is chancy, it's jazzy, it throws in some unexpected twists and turns. It's just tons of fun. You know, you'll never put this record on and not be surprised. You'll always find something new every time you hear it. And I put this on like 2 weeks ago and still heard something I've never heard before, which is great. So I've known this album for a good 15 years now. Some of the grooves on this album are really infectious. Like I can't help but dancing when I listen to La Mela de Odessa, the second track. It's just so much fun. You know, it's something that speaks to me in a really positive way.
Yeah, this wrap-up might be pretty short. I got nothing bad to say about this album. Maybe don't listen to it first thing in the morning. Other than that, no notes. Well, there is one kind of a downer associated with the research I did this week. The singer and organist, Greece-born Dimitrios Stratos. He died in 1979 while in the hospital because of aplastic anemia while waiting for a bone marrow transplant. If you're between 18 and 40 years old, consider joining the Blood Marrow Donor Registry. Go to bethematch.org for more information. Yes, exactly. But back to the album. I almost feel like I need to see these songs performed live before I can come away with a complete understanding of the music. A few of the songs, like L'Elefante Bianco and Gioia e Rivoluzione, well, they feel like you can start with the recorded versions and expand on them quite a bit. They feel like they were made as seeds for larger live experiences. And this, my brothers, sisters, and siblings, is the direct result of me being the child of a jam band musician. I did find a live version of one of them, La Mela di Odessa. It's longer than the studio version, higher energy too. Mostly the same arrangement. Approved. And without going into too many details, because nothing has been officially announced just yet, I do have a new project that's going to happen relatively soon. It's in the very early embryonic stage right now, but it will indeed have a vibe of fusion with upright bass. Listening to Crac has made me quite excited to put some more energy into getting it launched. So yeah, thanks, Mike. This one's a keeper. Grazie mille. Final thoughts, scale of 1 to 10. I give Crac by Area 150 venomous snakes confiscated from an illegal private collection in a residential neighborhood.
This is super cool. I mean, it's exciting to see like so many different species in the same room. I mean, it's crazy this isn't somebody's house, but these snakes are pretty awesome.
See you next week.